Cathcart Circle is one of my favourite routes in Train Sim World, largely due to its non-linear nature and interesting service variation. It's usually my go-to route whenever I want to run a short commuter service with an EMU, and in July 2024, Dovetail released a big update for the route ahead of the long-awaited Class 380 electric multiple unit, or as I call her, the German Haggis. So here are my 2 cents on the Class 380 and updated Cathcart Circle route. The route was first released in June 2021, back in the TSW2 era. The version compatible with TSW5 costs $43.59 NZD at full price, with the Class 380 costing an additional 25 New Zealand dollars. The 380 wasn't released until the 12th of July, and while informative, the pre-release article for the route upgrade and Class 380 was still quite a chore to read through due to the excessive use of phoned-in adjectives, and the article being rather wordy in general. As for route coverage, you get the suburban lines from Glasgow Central to Neilston and Newton, as well as both sides of the Cathcart Circle itself, going via Maxwell Park, Laneside, Cathcart and Mount Florida. Then there's also the spur off to Shields Depot, with the total route length only being 20 miles. Annoyingly, the updated timetable is not part of the Cathcart Circle remaster. You'll need to buy the Class 380 in order to get the new timetable, but the original is still accessible. The base route is set in 2014, and only includes the Class 314 electric multiple unit. 16 of these 3-car units were built in 1979, and they ran in service on the Glasgow suburban network right up until 2019. 15 of these units were scrapped, while the final survivor was rebuilt as some sort of hydrogen test bed. The 314 is essentially an overhead wires AC only version of the Class 313. We do have a 313 in TSW, but only the refurbished southern variant, which doesn't have a pantograph anymore. Originally, the 313s were all dual voltage. Like so many other motive power options in TSW, the Class 314 is fairly easy to drive, but she's a little bit more challenging than modern units like the 380 or 385. This is because the older unit has separate throttle and brake levers, while her modern counterparts have a combined throttle and brake lever. However, driving the 314 reminds me of one of my biggest gripes with TSW, the lack of an adjustable field of view, and Dovetail always set the driver's view camera too far forward, so when you're in the driver's seat, the cab feels more cramped than it should. Considering that TS Classic does have an adjustable field of view, it's weird that TSW4 doesn't. The route update for Cathcart Circle arrived a few days ahead of the Class 380. It's good to see this unit in TSW at last, because I noticed 380 specific stop markers at several stations on the route a fair while back, and thought the route was a little monotonous with only 314s running about. As for the improvements Dovetail have made to this route, these include, but are not limited to, TOD4 lighting, volumetric clouds and fog, although I don't actually remember what volumetric means, plus new lighting and rain effects on the Class 314, supposedly updated trackside scenery, and better lighting at Shields Depot. The upgrades do not apply to the older versions in TSW2 and TSW3, only TSW4 and onwards. As much as I like the Class 314 in TSW, I still find it weird that Dovetail only supplied this unit in one livery, namely ScotRail Saltire. In real life, only 7 out of the 16 314s ever carried this livery, while the others retained unbranded SPT Carmine and Cream right up until their withdrawal in 2019. The Saltire units were numbers 314203, 314204, 314208, 314209, 314211, 314212, and 314214. 314209 was the unit rebuilt as a hydrogen testbed. Now it's time for a look at the Class 380 Desiro. 38 examples of this design were built by Siemens of Germany between 2009 and 2011, with 22 units being the 3-car 380/1 variant, and the remaining 16 being the 4-car 380/1 variant. Both are included in the TSW add-on. The class was intended for the Glasgow Airport Rail Link project until it was cancelled, and now they run commuter and regional services in the Ayrshire and Inverclyde regions. The Class 380 has a tutorial scenario on the training centre route, but it's hidden away in journey mode, specifically the set called Desirable Journey. It features the usual generic instructions for setting up a train, pulling away and stopping at a station, plus the functional train management system screen in the case of this particular unit. But curiously, the coupling and uncoupling procedure is completely absent from the tutorial, and there's no manual available for this unit. Despite this predicament, you can at least watch the gangway animation on the occasional AI service in timetable mode. And for reference, here's a demonstration of the 380's default sounds, or at least the default motor sounds. That unusual motor sound is a common feature on the UK Desiros, as opposed to just being exclusive to the 380. I've now got a sound mod, made by Itzia165, installed for this unit, which makes an already decent sound set even better. Although I'm used to only driving the Class 314 on this route, I've had enough experience with one-handle units to find the 380 fairly easy to drive. I can't verify the accuracy of the physics, but I will say that the brakes are stronger than I was expecting. Even without the sound mod, I think the Class 380 is one of Dovetail's better products. If only their DLC was more consistent with its quality. The original timetable had 205 playable services for the Class 314, of which 52 were empty stock moves, or using the head shunt at Neilston, and the remaining 153 were passenger services. There was also a layer that used the rolling stock from Northern Transpennine to run a small rail tour, with motive power substitutions from Blackpool branches, Tees Valley, and the Class 31. It's unrealistic to see these diesel locomotives on a modern image route like Cathcart Circle because they're only set up to fit the 1980s era, and thus are not equipped with GSMR, TPWS, or any other modern safety systems. And yet, there's still a rail tour layer even on the updated timetable. I think my biggest issue with the original route was the completely lifeless rail scene at Glasgow Central. Originally, you would only see around 2 or 3 trains in the station at any one time, but fortunately, this is no longer the case on the remastered version. In the original timetable mode, you never saw the 314s running together in 6-car consists, only the 3-car units running on their own. The updated timetable finally has 314s coupled in pairs from time to time, and there's a lot more to this timetable than just the extended 314 formations. Too much detail for me to explain in this video. I refer you to Dovetail's pre-release article for the full rundown. The new timetable has 98 playable services for the Class 314 and 191 for the Class 380, broken down into 86 services for the 380/0 and 105 services for the 380/1. The Class 385 has 8 playable services as well, but these are A, all split into 2 parts, and B, only empty stock moves from Shields Depot to Glasgow Central, or vice versa. Upon closer inspection of the service lists, I noticed that the 380/1 mostly runs the Neilston services, while the 380/0 mostly runs to Newton instead. Both variants occasionally run clockwise or anti-clockwise services around the Cathcart Circle itself. Confusingly, the new timetable mode is based on the December 2023 schedule, despite the route being set 9 years previous. Real services run by 380s and 385s are represented by those units in-game, while the 314s are used to represent services that, in real life, would now be run by Class 318s and Class 320s. Now that the Class 390 is in TSW, mainly as an add-on for West Coast Mainline London to Milton Keynes, she also layers onto the updated Cathcart Circle at Glasgow Central. There's even a layer for the Class 801 from the Peterborough to Doncaster pack, representing the limited LNER service to and from Glasgow. The Class 390 and Class 801 can also be seen running past Newton Station on the West Coast Main Line. Strangely, the LNWR Class 350/1 from WCML South also appears at Glasgow Central. Apparently, this is to represent the Transpennine Express services to and from Liverpool. And that's all well and good, but I think the devs shouldn't have even bothered with this layer because an LNWR unit is completely out of place at this station, let alone anywhere in Scotland. Between 2013 and 2020, TPE actually used their own 350s on the Liverpool to Glasgow service, specifically the 10-strong 350/4 subclass, but they have since been transferred to LNWR following the arrival of the new Class 397 EMUs. In addition to the drivable services round the Cathcart Circle or off to Neilston and Newton, the 380 is also used to depict AI-only services running off the map to destinations such as Lanark, Wemyss Bay, Ardrossan Harbour, Gourock, and Edinburgh via Shotts. The ScotRail Class 158 also appears at Glasgow Central to depict services running on the non-electrified routes to East Kilbride, Kilmarnock, and Carlisle. But the 158's main home in TSW is the ScotRail Express route, by the notorious Rivet Games. As I alluded to in my review on this unit, I think the Scottish 158 is too expensive for what you get. The same goes for the Flixtrain BR193 Victron, more on her in a future video. The Class 380 doesn't have any timetable mode services on ScotRail Express, so the only way to run the unit over there is through free roam mode or the scenario planner. I don't like to use the latter myself, and only use the free roam option if I need certain scenes for a video that are impossible to pull off using timetable mode. The frame rates at Glasgow Central are not as good as they used to be, due to the increased number of trains present. I was getting between 38 and 50 FPS at this station, and by contrast, the frame rate was around 94 to 100 FPS down at Mount Florida and Newton. Overall, I was still okay with the performance of this route. While exploring this route, I noticed some bugs with the NPCs yet again. One time when I was at Patterton Station, they were getting stuck in the doorways on the 380, so I couldn't get through to a seat. Then, after that train left, this lot somehow ended up on the track before the Glasgow-bound service arrived. And then there's this bloke, whose bag straps phase through his body. Lastly, I saw some of them glitch into the platform at Newton after they got off this Class 380. At the end of the day, I'm happy with the improvements that Dovetail have made to the Cathcart Circle route in Train Sim World 4, and now TSW 5. The addition of the Class 380 and updated timetable breathed new life into a route that, while already being decent as it was, still had room for improvement. There aren't any more improvements or major problems needing fixing that I can think of, aside from possibly adding the East Kilbride line and getting rid of the LNWR Class 350 and Rail Tour layers. I think the updated Cathcart Circle deserves a 6 or 7 out of 10, while the German Haggis gets an 8.